coming, everyone. We'll get started shortly. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the Grantmakers in the Arts 2023 conference, GIA Multiverse Revisiting Past to Build a Future. This is our summer series. This is our first summer series session, and we are thrilled that you'll be able to join us today. And no worries, this will be recorded. So if there's anything that you might miss, or folks who are watching this in follow-up, you know that everything's fine. There's a recording that's going out, and we're capturing all of the details. So I'm Sherilyn Seeley. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Grantmakers in the Arts. I have on like a tan colored dress. I have pink lipstick on. My hair is pulled back in a low bun. I have chocolate skin, and I am really glad to be here with you today. So the name of today's summer series session is Learning from Puerto Rican Artists Directly. And before we get into more of the content, I'm going to offer you a few housekeeping things. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So first and foremost, please take a moment to review some of our FAQ information. It just kind of gives a little bit more information on how we're going to be convening both today, future summer series sessions, and at our conference. And it'll just kind of help us orient ourselves. I've added a link into the chat that you can use and peruse through. And also, like I said, the sessions will be recorded, so that's great news. If you have any technical issues during the presentation, you can reach out directly to the name that says tech with a line, like a space, Christine, or also LGC Tech Cat, okay? They will assist you if you have any technical issues. Otherwise, you can use the Q&A feature that you should see at the bottom of your screen to ask questions directly to our panelists. All right. If you'd like your experience to include live captioning, you can select the closed caption or CC feature in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, and then select show subtitles. So to get into our content, today we will be hearing from Puerto Rican artists Pura Fé, Fabiola Mendez, and Precious Perez in conversation with Tiara Mar of Whippoorwill Arts. And so with that, I'm going to kick it over to Tiara so we can get started. And I'm going to come off camera. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much. So excited to be here. My name is Tiara. I am a lighter-skinned brown person with wavy black hair, a green earring, a brown necklace, and a white collared shirt with a red and black embroidered vest. I am in a room with yellow walls and a wooden chair behind me. I'm so grateful to be joining y'all today in learning from Puerto Rican artists directly. I am joining y'all from the unceded homelands of the Ohlone peoples. I'm really grateful for their stewardship and care of this land and its resources, also known as Oakland, California. I'm so excited to introduce y'all to the three incredible musicians joining us today. We're gonna have a lot of fun. Music is one of the most vital rituals we have anchoring our communities. It's one of our oldest expressions of togetherness. It's healing collectively, individually, emotionally, and physically. At Whippoorwill Arts, we seek to reimagine the music ecosystem in a way that honors the labor, contributions, and creative spirit of working musicians through collective effort, centering Black and Indigenous musicians, musicians of color, queer musicians, disabled musicians, and all the multiplicities in between in our work. As an organization, we are led by working musicians. Almost all of our funding goes directly to musicians, and our programming responds to the top 3 needs reported by working musicians as identified in our 2021 National Research Survey. The first is ethical pay and professional protections. The second is consideration of the cost of travel, time, and lodging that musicians need to do their work. And the third is more opportunities to play for small listening audiences. How can we make sure that working conditions are conducive to musicians' well-being, including and especially protection from discrimination and material empowerment? A really deep and critical part of that work for us is the redistribution of opportunity, wealth, and power through serious investment into roots musicians. Roots music speaks to structures of history, class, race and ethnicity, gender and sexuality, nation state, ability, religion, and relation to land that shape our world today. We want to move through this workshop with deep reverence for the stewardship of Puerto Rican land defenders, caregivers, community builders, and protectors of the water. US occupation in Puerto Rico has driven the archipelago towards environmental and financial precarity while profiting enormously from extracting resources of the land and culture. This image is Whippoorwill Arts Fellows 2022 to 2023 with Beto Torrens, who's an incredible Puerto Rican bomba historian and percussionist. He led us through a history and timed workshop during our fellowship retreat in Puerto Rico earlier this year. In our time there, we witnessed a really beautiful and stunning cycle of disruption and world building through art and restoring lands. Pura, Fabiola, Precious, and I really wanted to ground this workshop in song and storytelling. You will hear an original work from each artist before transitioning into a storytelling and conversation piece. Some of the themes we will be grounding these explorations are in our first is resurgence. How can we honor the living Taino roots of the land and support Indigenous assertions of belonging and responsibility? The second is inclusion. We really want to spend some time focusing specifically on the experiences of artists living on the archipelago. And the third is protection, materially empowering Puerto Rican artists to nurture their own communities. How can we lessen the refraction and get funding to musicians and artists who need it? I'm going to briefly intro our speakers before we delve into the much more fascinating parts of today. All of these musicians I met through Whippoorwill Arts' fellowship and advocacy programs. Pura Fé, maybe we can spotlight the musicians. Pura Fé was one of our fellows in this year's cohort. She is a lighter-skinned brown person with gray and black hair, wearing purple wampum shell earrings, a necklace with carved stones, feathers, and teeth, sitting in a room with white walls. Pura is a Tuscarora and Taino singer, songwriter, musician, storyteller, educator, seamstress, artist, and reviver of canoe song, dance, and women's song and drum. She is the founding member of the Native women's a cappella trio Ulali and has worked with several theater groups, dance groups, and filmmakers, and several communities teaching culture, song, and dance. On a personal note, Pura is literally hilarious, thoughtful, brilliant, and I learned so much from her about what the real work in our movement looks like. And I'm so excited to be with her here today. Also in our 2022 to 2023 fellowship program is Fabiola Mendez. Fabiola is a Black person with curly, short Black hair. She is sitting in a room with white walls and has 4 string instruments behind her. She's wearing a yellow shirt, Black glasses, and dangly earrings. Native to Caguas, Puerto Rico, Fabiola Mendez began playing the cuatro, a 5 double-string traditional guitar of Puerto Rico, when she was 6 years old. She's a cuatrista, singer, composer, educator, and documentary maker. Her artistic vision and original music focus on the exploration of her culture, her ancestry, and her identities. As you're about to feel, her smile is so infectious and her artistic brilliance leaves you with a deep, deep glow. She holds so much knowledge and is truly such an incredible artist. Our third speaker is Precious Perez. Precious is a blind Puerto Rican woman with box braids. She's sitting on a Black couch in a room with beige walls. Precious was born in Boston to a Puerto Rican family and currently resides in Kentucky. Her purpose is to be the first blind reggaetonera in the Latin music industry, breaking the mold. Precious actively works to make space for music professionals with disabilities, serving as the Vice President of Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities, also known as RAMPed. Her musical era debuted at the Kennedy Center with a fusion of reggaeton and salsa that deeply connects with her roots and enjoyment of life. She is so sweet, works on really tremendously groundbreaking inclusion projects and incredible music. Yeah, I'm really excited. Let's dive into the actual fun part. Pura, I'm gonna pass it over to you. Maybe you can really briefly introduce the song we're gonna be playing of yours so we can get right into it.
Okay, thank you. So the song that you're going to hear it's a work in it's still in progress. So there's things that are missing, but it's a canoe song, and the sounds of the water and the singers. I don't have the sounds of the paddlers pushing. They go whoosh, or the person giving all the commands, but it's all in Taino language. And so there you go. Thank you. So, just want to speak a little bit about my connection and just through my father and his mother and my Taino ancestry, Jibaro, um, and also growing up in the Native community in New York City, being a part of the Indian Center. A lot of people from Puerto Rico started to come. So I watched this whole Taino resurgence. Even though I was mostly with my mother's people, I got this connection came through me eventually. I decided it was time to collaborate and to donate, or what's the word, to give a piece, since I make music. And I thought it would be great to start writing canoe songs, because I write canoe songs for my mother's people. But I hear all the songs from my father's people. I hear it. So I started writing. And when we all went to Puerto Rico together, it was very profound for me. It was so much of the land really fed me spiritually. And so right now I'm recording this album, and it's going to be a part of a feature film, which is about the Taino resurgence. It's very important. These songs come with dances as well. And I really would like to be on the land more and to work with youth. And I was invited some time ago to work at a Taino immersion school that was in Maunabo, which is where my father's from. But it was doing very well, and I was going to go out there and start working with the youth in song and dance and so forth. And so these songs and dances also belong to all those bates that they have in Puerto Rico. There's many of them. And I know that the people are really trying to secure all those sacred sites. So all of this culture that's coming through so many people, this is my contribution to helping to secure and bringing culture in. And it's not just Puerto Rico, that the Taino people are part of so many islands, and they are coming together in their cultural ways. So that's what my music is. And it's connected to land and the peoples. And that's all. Yeah. I thank Whippoorwill for everything. I don't think I would have made this connection like this. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pura, for sharing that song with us. It is so beautiful. I really love how you incorporated those ocean sounds and how the voices kind of create this little whirlpool, and like you can really hear the echoing, and just, yeah, so excited to see how the project evolves and see.
It's not fair. I did all those instruments. I didn't think I could do it, but anyway.
I guess I'm wondering, I know that the time that you've spent with the land and water, especially at, a couple sacred sites and sites that felt very sacred while we were in Puerto Rico, how did they shape the sounds on the project? And also, I'd love to hear more about how your relationship to land shapes your practice as an artist, both as a musician and in all the other ways, as a seamstress, as a drummer. Yeah.
Well, I mean, land in terms of, it's not just land, but it's the people of the land and their relationship, and that connection right there is what really helps me shape my music. Of course, the water and being on the water and in a canoe. For me, just the song is called Tonina, which is a dolphin. And so I've been on canoes when you're out there, and the fish life, they show themselves. And sometimes they play with you. I I'm not sure how to answer, except that it's usually, most of my music is tribal music. Not all of it, some of it's blues, which is tribal music too. And it's just working with people that come from specific places, and they hold so much music from the land that's old, and that's usually what I work with, and trying to incorporate that with today's everything. And so a lot of my music does go into movie soundtracks, and, and it usually does cover like from the land perspective. And I'm not sure how to describe that, but yeah,
Yeah.
but my time with everyone there was amazing. Um, it was very well, like I said before, it just fed me in a way that I can't describe. So
Yeah, definitely such a like really deep and ethereal type of connection that hard to put into words, but you really put it into the music and yeah, sounded so good. I love what you said about like, blues, is tribal music, and we also know that blues is Black music. And we had a conversation earlier that about like how through rhythms we can kind of trace the migration of people up and down these coastlines. And you also, I think in an email you wrote all these islands are Taino islands. And I love that, like how deeply interconnected communities were, for far, far longer than the period of European colonization. And I would love to hear a little bit about how you visualize these pathways of restoring this kind of intertwined communities on the islands and up and down the coastline.
well, yeah, reclaiming waterways. Waterways are our ancestral bloodlines. That's what they are. And and when I learned that the Taino canoes could carry anywhere from 80 to 150 people per canoe, and I was blown away. And yeah, they did a lot of extensive travel and trade up and down the coast, even past the canal, Panama Canal, all of that in the northern part of South America, onto the east, I mean, to the west side, even on the coast. They were huge travelers, and island to island, it was just, there's different lands, but they were all very connected. And I don't know what else to say other than I think it's time that this history is brought out, and the people, all the descendants are still living and alive. They should know this history. They should know where their ancestors were, how they traveled, where they came from. So to me, reclaiming the waterways really helps that. They even traded with my mother's people, the Tuscarora in the Carolinas. They were all the way up, and they just traveled very far. So these songs to me are that it's like a reclaiming of our waterways and our ancestral waterways and our connections to people. Water connects everyone. So that's to me is the main ingredient of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and so much of that knowledge about the connection through waterways is also you really kept alive through oral history, and also I know through your lived experience that just in the communities you've worked with and grown up in, and the song and dance work that you've done, just like really knowing and understanding how everything is evolving, and also how everything has moved in the past. And I'm wondering like how we can all absorb more of these oral histories, and also extending to Fabiola. I know the historical element of the music you play is such an important part of how you perform. And Precious, I think also with the advocacy work you do, integrating the kind of knowledge that lives in lived experiences within the music industry and also in community work. I'd love to hear a little bit about like tapping into oral history.
Well, you want me to say something about oral history? Okay. Oh,
If you'd like
I mean,
to.
for me, I didn't really learn much about my oral history on my father's side or my Taino side. I heard more about my oral history through the Tuscarora side. And I really deeply know my mother's family and their roots just coming out of the Carolinas. And we are a mixture. And just that whole, just the music itself coming from the people that were there on the land and all the African people that came and then the Scots in our area. So that is something that's very alive in my mother's family and the music. And I come from a long lineage of singers. So, and there's a transition of like some of the very indigenous music, and then all of a sudden it becomes blues, and then, so it's like all these different things came into the community and the music changed. And I think it's the same for the Taino people. So it's just like all these instruments, and there's certain things that the people aren't aware of. And I did a movie called Rumble, The Indians That Rock the World. And it's it just played last night, so they brought me in, and it's all about the indigenous contributions to American music. And I'm thinking, I think it's time to make one about like in the Caribbean and showing where all these different influences come from, because it's connected to history and connected to land, and it's just connected to so much. I think that those things need to be kept alive. And yeah, so you understand who you are better. Yeah. Not
From
only that, but
Sure.
oh, okay.
No, go ahead, Pura. Sorry.
Okay. I was gonna say, just wanted to put this one last thing in there. It's like there's beautiful old sites in Puerto Rico and on all the islands. These are old sites that need to be kept preserved and alive. And you have a lot of people trying to like coming in that are buying up and privatizing these places. And this is meant for all the people. And I think that, and that whole Taino presence is in the land so deeply, and that these places need to be cared for and taken care of and not bulldozed over or thrown away. There are pieces there that are thousands and thousands of years old. And so that when I see that, that's what this music is. That's what comes out of it. It's like it's from the land. It's just, I so feel my connection there, like more than I do my mother's. That's crazy, but I do. So that's all. I just want to say that.
For me, meeting Pura was essential, because being born and raised in Puerto Rico, there's unfortunately this narrative, just like there is in other parts of the world, where we're being told constantly that the Tainos have been extinct and that we don't have anything besides a couple of words and a couple of town names and a couple of different customs, like making hammocks and making the casabe bread and certain and the growing of the root vegetables. There are certain things that we're conscious that belong to the Tainos, but unfortunately in the mass level and the educational level, I grew up thinking that the Tainos are part of my ancestry, but there are no Tainos anymore. So meeting Pura and also being able to connect with other groups that are part of the Taino culture in the island and then outside of the archipelago, really like gave me that perspective that not only we have the Spanish and the African influences, which are very, very present in our music particularly, but a lot of our customs are more connected to the Tainos. And then we have instruments that are also from the Tainos, like the maracas and the guiro, that are part of the instrumentation that we use in the folk music, which is my area of expertise. But then our folk music also has the cuatro, which is the Puerto Rican guitar, which I have here, and you'll hear in a little bit. And we also have the bongos and the congas, which are, of course, related a little bit more to the African ancestry, although the Tainos were also super rhythmic, and we had a lot of different percussion instruments. So I guess in terms of my perspective for the question that you're posing, Tiara, is I think it's important that we start having conversations among different groups of artists, not just, oh, I'm in this genre, or this is my identity, so I'm gonna stay in this group of people, but also learning from other people that might come from the place where you come from or might not, but then might have something for you to learn from. So again, I'm super grateful that now, like, my vision of what our culture is has changed, and now I'm excited also to learn more about the language and about the music and see how I can incorporate that into what I do.
Yeah, I agree. I grew up in Boston. Um, so the culture is more learned for me. But I've kind of had the same thing where I've always been told, like, oh, Tainos, that's part of our ancestry. But, like, most people are like, oh, well, they do these dances and this and that, and these are parts of Taino culture, but they don't exist anymore. So as we've been having these conversations leading up to today, and just really getting to learn from Pura and from Fabi, and just all these different perspectives, it's really shown me that, like, we can still really connect to our history and to our roots, and that comes with really building this network and this community and learning from one another. And I'm so excited, Pura, to hear your album and to, like, really just start learning more too. It's really exciting to see that, you know, everybody is still here and we can still learn and continue to um, support the resurgence and really uplift our culture.
Oh, thank you. Mhm.
Where I know you're hoping to return to Puerto Rico sometime in the coming months, and I know that song and dance work is really, really essential to the way you see this resurgence. Do you want to share a little about your song and dance work, and maybe what you've done in the past, and also what you hope to do in Puerto Rico?
Sure. Well, I'm going there on August 1st. I'm flying out there. I'm going to meet a group of women. So I guess all the songs always have dance, even though these are songs that are made for pulling on the water. Not all of them are. Some of them are songs for, like, making cassava and even pounding corn. There's songs for everything and dances for everything. So I really would like to see, I'd like to help in contributing to the arietos they have, like their gatherings. They usually have them on the equinox and the solstices. But at the same time, I would love to work with youth in storytelling. So bringing some of the stories back through song and dance. It's almost like theater, but through song and dance. And that's really what I want to do. I want to work with youth. I used to have, I put together several dance troupes in North Carolina. And so I'd love to do that in Puerto Rico. So that's my dream, to get out there and develop that, and making the outfits and, like, the sashes, and everything has meaning. Everything tells a story.
Yeah, absolutely. The sash that we kind of had on the graphic, that while Pura's song was playing, is a sash that Pura actually made. Pura, I don't know if you want to Let's share. Okay, I think we're getting a
What,
yeah.
a sash? Another one I made. So, but this is, I really want to work with the hamaka makers, the hammock makers. This is all upside down and it's driving me crazy already. So these they crisscross. They crisscross your heart and your back. It's called an ancestral rib cage. And this represents the mountains. It also represents the two sets of twins that are in the creation stories. And these represent the canoes. And they go up and down the whole sash. And on the sides of the sash are these long drops, which are the waterfalls that come off the mountain. And so these, even the patterns are like mountains or frogs, the cookies, and just represents the island and the peoples and their connections to the water. That's all it is. But I wanted to contribute to the clothing, the traditional clothing that everyone's wearing. They wear all white, and I thought they need another splash of color, and this is it. So they're all different. Every one of them is different. All the different colors. That's all. I gifted about 15 of them. I made 15 of them. They take about 2 weeks to make. So I gifted so the people would start wearing them. That's all.
Fabi, Precious, any wrapping up thoughts before we transition into Fabi's song? Yeah, I think I just really want to echo what Fabi was saying is there's so much about the interconnectedness of our communities, of the interconnectedness of all the struggles of colonized peoples that I learned through meeting you, Pura. There were things that you were visualizing, just like rockets going off in the brain of like how much we can learn from each other and just how much is kept in our oral histories and lived experiences that we have to learn from and like really learn from the experiences and lives of people and the lands that they live on. And so grateful for that knowledge that really stemmed from you. Yeah, Fabi, I'm excited to pass it on to you. We have the absolute delight of getting to witness a live performance from Fabiola. Off to you.
Yes. So hello, everyone. Again, very happy to be here. I will be sharing a video of a live performance of a song entitled La vida es lucha toda. Life is a constant battle. And I will briefly translate the lyrics that you're going to hear. You're going to also hear the cuatro, which is the instrument that I play. I'll show you in a little bit how it works and all of that. But the song, the lyrics in Spanish are translated to: I am the daughter of the sea, of the valley and the mountain range. I am the harmony and the cadence of the aguinaldo of my ancestors. I am the whistling of my grandfather, the melodies of their legacy. I am the youth eager to fight for our people. Here, like this, now, I will fight for you until the end. Here, like this, now, until my people are free. I am like the butterfly that flies here and there. Between fluttering and colors, I'm looking for my place. Here, like this, now, I will fight for you until the end. Here, like this, now, until my people are free. Enjoy.
juventud deseosa de luchar por mi país. Y ahora lucharé por ti hasta el final. Y ahora para que el pueblo sea libertad. Soy como la mariposa que vuela aquí y allá, entre aleteo y colores, buscando mi lugar. Y ahora lucharé por ti hasta el final. Y ahora para que mi pueblo sea libertad. Porque la vida es lucha toda, la vida es lucha toda, la vida es lucha toda, como dijo Borges. Aquí, así, ahora, lucharé por ti hasta el final. Aquí, así, ahora, para que mi pueblo sea libre ya.
Thank you. I hope that you enjoyed that. I will share a little bit about the instrument that you were hearing and how it connects to my story. So this is the cuatro, and it's the national instrument of Puerto Rico. It's a folk guitar. It takes its name from the original amount of strings it had, cuatro. This instrument was developed around the late 1800s, and of course it is a development influence on the Spanish European instruments. We had other string instruments prior to that were developed during the colonization period, but this is the one that was adapted and adopted as the official sort of folk guitar from Puerto Rico. As it evolved, the shape of the instrument evolved as well as the amount of strings. So originally had 4, now it has 5 pairs or 10 strings. And it is played with a pick, so very similar to the technique of a vihuela or a mandolin. And it's mostly used for what we call jíbaro music, música jíbara, or the folk music of Puerto Rico. As I mentioned earlier, this music is sort of a merge of all the different cultures that made Puerto Rico what it is today. So in the instrumentation of the música jíbara, we have the cuatro, which is usually taking the lead in the melodies and playing different sort of folk tunes that there are many different names, but one that you heard in that song is the word aguinaldo. And then aguinaldo is a form of folk song that can be very simple. It can be a 4-line sort of verse where the singers will improvise based on that 4-line chorus idea. And it's a very call and response, very community-based making type music. So you have the cuatro, you have the singers, and then you have the acoustic guitar would be traditionally the instrument that plays the chords. And then the percussion is the guiro, which is a Taino instrument. I don't have one with me right now, but it looks sort of like a large avocado, and it's the scratchy. It makes a you play it with a puya. It's something that looks like a comb. And then we also have the bongos, which of course are the small hand drums. And sometimes we have congas too in the traditional setting. So I grew up playing this instrument. I learned because my dad used to play it, but also my family used to do all these different gatherings where we would have musicians come and play aguinaldos and play other types of folk songs. So very much around the folk music scene. And as I was growing up, this was an instrument that you can imagine, it's a folk guitar. So young people are not as drawn to it. And I would be teased in school because it wasn't a cool instrument, quote unquote cool. I was always playing around older people until I had the opportunity of attending a music school in Puerto Rico, which is called Escuela Libre de Música. So we have 5 of those music schools that belong to the Department of Education. It's sort of a different situation than in the US. We don't really have music programs in regular public schools. Some of them might be super lucky and get funds for that, but most of them don't. So what the Department of Education did is that they allocated the music school. There are 5 on the island that are public and accessible for everybody. They're usually after school, so they start around 3 p.m. until 6 or something like that. So I would go to my regular school and then go to my music school, which in that school, I got to meet other young people who also play the cuatro, and that was essential, to find people my age that I could relate to that had sort of the same interests as I did. But it wasn't until I moved to Boston, which I did when I attended college. I went to Berklee College of Music, and I moved from Puerto Rico to Boston when I was 18. Coming to Boston and being playing a unique instrument was a challenge, but it was also very special because people didn't know what this instrument was. So they were very much interested in it. They were appreciative of it, something that I didn't really feel when I was growing up, because again, it was kind of like, oh, that's for old people. That's for people in the mountains. So coming to Boston and really connecting again with my roots was important, because I feel like I was very passionate about my instrument and I had all of my family support, but I didn't really feel that sort of social, let's call it that, support, artistic support to what I wanted to do. And I didn't even think that being an artist was a possibility for me. I knew I loved making music and I got a scholarship to Berklee. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sort of follow this path, but I don't know how I'm going to be able to make it once I graduate. And my major was in music education, sort of as a safety. I mean, I love teaching, but I was also very scared of what I was going to be able to do. And that brings me to sort of something that I want to share with everybody. If you're going to Puerto Rico, or if you're working with Puerto Rican artists, is giving you a little bit of the perspective of, first of all, the land has been a colony for more than 500 years. So culturally, I like to say we're all colonized. The way that we see the world, the way that we relate to each other, the way that we see our relationship with the continental United States is a colonized one. It's a one of sort of dependence. A little bit, we have this sort of cultural thing where we don't really feel like we can be auto-sustainable if we weren't to be a territory, because that's what our history has been for more than 500 years. And unfortunately, there's no one alive that hasn't been colonized, right? So in that land. So it's also important to have that perspective that people don't really have the tools to, what do I want to say, to understand how they can, especially as artists, to understand how they can make it. We don't really have a lot of access to what is a grant or what organizations we can reach out to sort of fund a lot of our projects. So I had the blessing that coming to the other side of the pond, as we call it, I got to learn a lot about that, and a lot of organizations that are supporting American citizens regardless of the location. But being on the archipelago, I didn't even understand or realize that that was a possibility for me. Of course, that is changing now in this time, but back in the day, it was way harder. But yeah, I think it's important to remember, you know, how we can provide better educational opportunities or access or resource opportunities so that artists, American citizens all around, not only in the continental US, understand and know the opportunities that are available for them, especially in terms of the programs that run nationally and all of that. So that's a little bit of my story with the Cuatro and how and let me just finish saying that I'm blessed to be a performer, a performing artist, have a lot of work. I'm also writing. So at the end, it was a happy ending. I was able to figure out how to make it. But it was definitely a challenge. And I think growing up with that mentality of, you know, if you love music, if you're an artist, you can teach. I mean, you can play gigs here and there, but let's just teach, because that's the safe way. That's something that I grew up with. And I'm glad that my horizons were expanded and that I learned about all the many different opportunities that we have as artists in the world and especially in the United States.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. That song was incredible. Yeah, the Cuatro is so beautiful. The way you play it is incredible. Yeah, can't wait to keep hearing more. I'm gonna ask you first, like maybe a question about your own art practice, and then we can talk more about inclusivity for artists who are living on the archipelago. I guess history about the Cuatro and context about the songs that you play are so central to how you perform, and especially how I've witnessed you perform. And at the same time, I know a big part of your practice is experimenting with folk traditions and responding to folk traditions. I'm wondering if you feel a difference in the space you have to be experimental and responsive when you're performing to Puerto Rican audiences. Are there also opportunities you find in being able to reframe these contexts and histories to intergenerational Puerto Rican audiences? And at the same time, are there elements that get lost in translation when you're performing for non-Puerto Rican audiences?
I love the question. Thank you. Well, the first question around, you know, the sort of fusion and thinking about different genres influencing the music that I do. It was the first time I did it. It was definitely when I came to Boston. I was already exploring with other genres that were non-folk Puerto Rican music when I was still on the archipelago, but it was, you know, when I went to Berkeley and just got to explore everything and learn from so many people. I took a big risk, and I was a little bit scared of how that was going to be perceived and received, because again, coming from that mentality of colonized peoples, we are very protective of what we feel like belongs to us, because there's very little that we have control of, especially governmentally, politically, all of that. So people, in terms of our traditions, and that's why a lot of people, you know, say that Puerto Ricans are always with their flag, very proud and all of that. But I think it's because that sense of, this is who I am, and this is the only thing that like physically I can say it's mine. I was coming with that in mind, and I knew that some people were going to be like, oh, why are you doing that to our folk music, or our instrument doesn't belong in that. our instrument is for the Puerto Rican traditions. But I've always been very mindful and respectful of both sides of the equation, where I do a lot of work with folklore singers and artists. And I'm also sort of trying to reflect on my experience as a 21st century musician, as a musician of the diaspora that's constantly moving between the archipelago and the continental US. And sort of my narrative is always around, I'm reflecting on my own experiences. I'm not trying to impose that this genre needs to be for the Cuatro or anything like that. And the fact that I'm also doing a lot of traditional folk music helps. So there have been people that are not necessarily happy with some of the work, but I think the fact that I'm always very respectful, and that a lot of what I do is also an educational aspect of our music, of our instruments, and I perform all these songs like the one you heard, which is a little bit of fusion with the drums, the acoustic drums that I like to call it, because he's playing a cajon and then the snare drum, and it's this sort of mix of percussion and drum set. But the fact that I do that music, but then I still perform traditional music with that instrumentation, and I share in my performances a lot of the history and a lot of the context of this instrument and all the songs, is helpful. It's kind of like a happy, everyone's happy. I try to keep it well-rounded so people can understand where the instrument comes from, but then also see where it can go and how it can be in any genre, regardless of the traditional way of playing it. And then can you remind me of the last question you asked, because I don't remember.
That was beautiful. If that's the part that resonated with you, that was so good to hear. I'd also love to extend to Pura and to Precious if there's experiences y'all have of kind of integrating instruments that are traditional, instruments that have really deep resonances in how we relate to them, and then kind of bringing them into the studio and really doing the work of showing that this is an instrument that is something that you can experiment, something that is living and evolving. Precious, Pura, any thoughts? I think you're muted, Pura.
Oh, I'm not sure how to answer, but I would love to hear the Cuatro with not just the Cuatro. I would love to hear Fabi playing with the Taino songs. I think it's like this, and what you said about this is the only thing that you could feel that is theirs. That really that makes me, that shakes inside me, because I want everyone to know that all of that land, everything is theirs, right? So I love your lyrics. I just have to say the words are so beautiful. Your singing is so beautiful. Your playing is off the hook. I just think that whatever you create, it would resonate, and it can really help and heal, I think. Yeah, that's happened to me with my own music, with the traditional, and people get all, territorial and stuff. Just don't pay attention. Just do the right thing for yourself.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
It is also so interesting to hear that moving to Boston is kind of what helped you believe that being an artist is even possible for you, especially because I know you have so much love and longing for homeland. And you also kind of mentioned that things are shifting a little bit within the art community in Puerto Rico. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what are the types of support networks you've seen evolve in the artist community in Puerto Rico, and what is also now missing that would really make envisioning a life in art more possible for artists in Puerto Rico? The second one is a big question.
Here we go. Okay. It used to be a very political sort of environment where, depending on what type of party was in the government or who was ahead of different organizations, that's what sort of shaped what type of opportunities artists would get. And of course, there was a lot of, if you were aligned with this type of vision or political party, then you would be the one that would play a lot of the music festivals, so that would be representative of the Puerto Rican culture in other festivals. So it was this very sort of politicized way of moving in the artistic community. Nowadays, it's a lot different because we have access to technology, we have access to education, we have access to creating a little communities between artists in different regions of the island. And of course, the people have evolved and the mentality has changed a lot. So I have to say that, first of all, the Institute of Culture in Puerto Rico has done a lot of work, especially making sure that every event that is funded by the government has to have a percentage of the funds that go to traditional artist makers. So either the folk music or the bomba music or the plena music. So there's definitely, you know, making sure that even though we have a lot of pop music and reggaeton, that still the folk and the traditional music have a space, especially in festivals and all of that. Another big thing that has happened lately is that the indie artists have finally tried, because it's so hard, right? But really tried to make a community and make a space. The organization is called La Escena Y. I'll type it in the chat. It's not really like an organization. I don't think they are. I think it's just a collective of artists that get together, and but they work with different bigger organizations to make sure that indie artists have spaces to perform and all of that. And they've done a lot of work, not only creating community spaces for artists to create together, to engage in conversations and talk about their challenges, talk about ideas, proposals, but also they've provided resources, especially lately. They've done a couple of workshops around mental health for artists, independent artists, because of course, it's a lot harder when you don't have a label or a manager or anyone that can really support you in that sense. So that's another big resource. I'll type it really quick in the chat, just in case anyone is interested in learning more about them. I'm sure you can Google La Escena Y, letter Y, and learn a little bit more about their work. And in terms of something that is missing, at least from my perspective and my experience living on the island, has been what I mentioned earlier, you know, access to funding opportunities, or even understanding what is required for even apply for a grant. Nowadays, again, the Institute of Culture, and there are other foundations on the island that are smaller nonprofits that provide grant opportunities. They're usually small, and they can only provide very little amount of grants. But again, that's why I said that it's changing, because I don't think that we used to have had that before. Now we do have a small amount, but I think it would be really helpful for the conference and the grant makers that have opportunities to connect with organizations and with artists on the island, to really pose those questions, like what are some of the resources that they're providing for artists, and how some of the organizations in the continental US that provide national support can also support the artists that live in the archipelago. Sometimes it's difficult if you don't have a continental US address to apply for certain things. So also, considering how we can be more inclusive in terms of that with all the artists on the island.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Fabi. I wanted to extend to Pura, Precious again, if y'all have thoughts on really inclusivity for artists who are living on the archipelago, and then Precious will transition into your song sharing. Beautiful. It sounds like we're ready for you, Precious.
Hello. I want to just say, Fabi, that was fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to staying connected with both of you, and hopefully collaborating in the future. This is really awesome. So really happy to be here. And the piece that I'm sharing with all of you today is called Melanin Queen. It's my latest release, and it's with under a small Costa Rican nonprofit label called We Could Be Music. And this is the lyric video. So it's kind of a mix of English and Spanish. It's got like a Jersey club kind of EDM and dembow, kind of all mixed together. And it's really celebration and joy. And I'll tell you more about the story after we hear it, but I hope you like it.
Look at the big shit. Huepa. Booty. Preciosa. Dale.
Natural, me deben amar, porque siempre soy como Dios me hizo. Melanin, color of my skin, some don't understand, I'm not listening. Natural, me deben amar, porque siempre soy como Dios me hizo. Melanin, color of my skin, some don't understand, I'm not listening. Melanin queen, I know what I'm about, that I'm sharing with the Precious Perez name in their mouth. Blind and boricua pa' que tú lo sepas, stepping with my damn kid en la discoteca. Y yo soy extraordinario, pon mi música de radio. Natural curls and caramel complexion, melanin power. Natural, me deben amar, porque siempre soy como Dios me hizo. Melanin, color of my skin, some don't understand, I'm not listening. Natural, me deben amar, porque siempre soy como Dios me hizo. Melanin, color of my skin, some don't understand, I'm not listening. Llamando my ladies to the dance floor. The only shade welcome here is all yours. Enseña a la gente una sorpresa. Soy como Dios me hizo. Melanin, color of my skin, some don't understand, I'm not listening. Melanin queen, I know what you're about, got them staring because they can keep your name out their mouth. No pueden hacer nada pa' que tú lo sepas, pull up like a baddie en la discoteca. Y tú eres extraordinario, sube la música rápido. Natural curls with all your complexions, melanin power, perfection. Natural, no deben amar, porque siempre somos como Dios nos hizo. Melanin, color of our skin, some don't understand, but we're not listening. Llamando my ladies to the dance floor. The only shade welcome here is all yours. Enseña a la gente una sorpresa.
Thank you. This is the first time it's been like shared in a public forum like this, so it's really exciting. Um, so the way this song came to be is I was in Walmart with my grandma and my cousin, and my grandma's accent is very, very strong. So she my cousin and I decided that we were gonna drive around one of those carts that for older people where you can sit in them and drive them around. And of course, you don't want a blind person driving, so she was steering and I was pressing the gas and flooring it when I probably didn't need to. But that's beside the point. So we decided to make a TikTok out of it. And in the TikTok, my grandma was doing her Spanglish commentary we're driving around giggling, and she's going, mira que linda, which means like, wow, look how cute, look how pretty they're doing this silly thing. And so I didn't think anything of it. Me and my cousin put it on TikTok, and it was, it was just a TikTok. It was fine. But then my cousin and my little cousin one day were like, hey, what if you put grandma's mira que linda over a dembow beat? And I was like, I'm gonna write that down. So I wrote it down, and I didn't really know how it was gonna come to fruition, and I just kind of was like, I'll sit on it. And then one morning I woke up with Melanin Queen in my head, just like Melanin Queen, and that was it. Like, that was all I had. But then I was like, wait a minute, I can combine these two things, and this could be something. And when I originally wrote the lyrics, what I was really trying to convey was, there are so many people that look at people of color like we're different because of the color of our skin. Or like, for a long time when I was little, I was told like, oh, you have to straighten your hair because I have really curly hair. And they're like, oh, the only way we can deal with it is if you put a relaxer treatment in it, or you have to straighten it if you're doing an event or something because it looks better that way. And just all of these things culturally that are suppressed because of the quote unquote beauty standard. And so what I really not only wanted to touch on, those things, but also me and my own personal intersections as a disabled woman of color, and, a disabled female artist in this industry. Within the Hispanic culture, disability is kind of a thing that's not really talked about. Or you're kind of looked at as, oh, like, pobrecita, she can't do anything. Or, these things where a lot of it comes from lack of education. And so what I do in my work is really amplify disability culture, because disability is a culture, and it is an identity, and it is a diversity. And so that's a huge part of who I am as a person, but who I am as an artist as well. Because disability isn't really talked about. And, we don't see disabled musicians at the forefront. Like, we have Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder, but they're men, and they're also not Latino. So that was kind of my whole thought behind this, and really just giving people an anthem to celebrate who they are, and giving myself the space to be able to celebrate who I am and my roots. And just really creating that kind of space for anybody who identifies differently. And, we all deserve to be comfortable in our own skin, and to celebrate who we are, and not let anybody get in the way of that.
Thanks so much, Precious. Oh my God, I love the story of how you combine all these elements of your song with your grandma. That's so funny. And it's also so cool getting to see the range of your music, from like the acoustic ukulele to more of this like dembow beat that we just heard. And yeah, just feel so lucky to get to see you smile as the song played. Definitely was moving in my seat. Such a good song. Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying about how integral tying in disability culture to also, the cultures that we all have as people of color is to you, and how that's such an important part of your work in this movement. Through Ramped, we've seen like that it is already like a big part of the struggle to make sure that musicians with disabilities are hired. I think Ramped mentioned that almost 70% of musicians with disabilities report facing discrimination when it comes to booking. That's one part of the struggle, but there's the real work afterwards of making sure that musicians are asked to perform in a way that also contributes to their well-being and doesn't put them at risk. And I know a lot of the work that you're doing, as you mentioned, being one of the first Latina women, blind Latina women in this industry, you're doing really groundbreaking advocacy work. And I guess my question is, how do you protect yourself in the absence of systems in place? And then how do you also protect yourself while using your experiences to extend to others this blueprint of protection?
Absolutely. So I think forms of protection come in, the support system that I've created and the network that I've created. If things, you know, are going a certain way and I don't really know what to do, or I've never faced a situation, I have disabled musicians and established disabled musicians to look to and say, like, hey, how did you handle this? Or, um, you know, I have um, an amazing friend who is also the founder of Ramped, and she's given me a lot of guidance, and I probably wouldn't be at the point in my career that I am right now if it weren't for the tips and tricks that she gave me. And so just really leaning on the people that I know that I can count on to kind of pass things over with, really advocating for myself, because right now, like, I'm an indie artist. I don't have a manager. I don't have an agent. Like, I don't have any of those things. And so, really knowing what I need and being able to advocate for what I need in a concise way. Um, and there's also something called like an inclusion writer and those kinds of things that you can have in place to just have ready so that you don't have to communicate those things all the time to like different bookings, different venues, different things. um, it can be a lot though. I'm not gonna just say it's easy because it's not. But um, for me, it's the drive to be able to not only help elevate myself, but elevate my communities. And so I think it's really important to not only lean on like the community and the support system, and really creating that network, but also to really understand what your individual goal is as an artist, and to trust your instincts and your gut to not take opportunities that don't align necessarily with your mission or your values as an artist. I think there's a tendency for organizations to offer exposure um, in exchange for the performance of a disabled musician, whereas able-bodied musician would be offered payment. And so those are things to really consider and think about, like making sure that we're advocating for equal opportunity, because people with disabilities are professionals. We are here, we are doing the work, and now there's no excuse to say we can't be found because we are found at ramped.org. So yeah.
Yes, huge shout out to Ramped.
Yes.
Whippoorwill Arts has learned so much from Ramped in the work. And yeah, Precious, it's amazing to hear like how strong of an advocate you have to be for yourself, and also really beautiful to hear that y'all have really cultivated a community of care and network that you can rely on and support. And I also know that being one of the first people to do this work is exhausting. So I appreciate you mentioning that it's not easy. And I think it ties back to kind of the song that Fabi presented of La vida es lucha toda. And I just really want to pose to all three of you how you find rest while you're in this movement work, how you sustain yourself while being so committed to being voices of communities, and how you nurture your own creative spirit while also contributing to the movement. Pura, if you're able to also chime in, maybe would love to hear from all three of you on that.
Yeah, I think for me it's become this balance of, because I've always been a really busy person, out of necessity sometimes, but also just out of like habit. Like, I just can't stay still for very long. And so I've started to find this balance of, like, when my body is telling me I need to rest, then I just need to rest, and being okay with that, and recognizing that just because I'm resting, it doesn't mean that I'm lazy or that I'm not contributing enough or that I'm not doing enough. Because I can't, there's that whole saying, like, you can't fill anybody else's cup if yours is empty. And so I've really started to kind of balance out, like, and really listening to my body and to, my physical needs, but also when I'm feeling really overwhelmed or overstimulated, just finding quiet and peace and things that really make me happy. Sometimes I watch SpongeBob because I'm really obsessed with SpongeBob and I'm 25 and I'm not ashamed. Sometimes I'll just, um, go somewhere and walk around and just something that I've been wanting to do that may be small, but I haven't gotten a chance to, like having ordering out from my favorite place or getting my favorite dessert or catching up with somebody I haven't had a chance to talk to. I mean, there's so many different ways to find that rest and to really um, recenter. And I find that my family and my friends really help to ground me and center me whenever I'm feeling off balance or if I'm traveling so much and I haven't been able to just stop for a second. Really being able to find that space to do that. And, just listening to music for fun and, you know, recording music and covers just because I want to, not because I have to do something for work or because a audition is due or something like that. So there's a lot of different ways. It just kind of depends on the situation and what I'm feeling, where I'm at, and just really being self-aware, I think, is what it comes down to, and really mindful. Um, it's really helpful to just stop and breathe and be still for a sec.
I agree with Precious. I think my main thing is just setting up boundaries, kind of similar to what Precious was saying. And the first one, learning how to say no and how to honor myself, to take time for my instrument, especially for my art and my creative practice, so that it doesn't get carried away with all the admin side of being an artist or all the networking or all the performances and the actual doing, but also the time down is essential. So really practicing, taking the time to set those boundaries for the time that's for myself.
Beautiful. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Pura.
Yeah, I don't have much different to say either, but yeah, I agree. It's about since COVID ended, a lot of the musicians had to do a lot of work on Zoom, and it was very demanding. And now that we're all traveling, it's like we're trying to squish that same kind of schedule within our physical life, and it's impossible. So yeah, you have to set boundaries for sure. I've got 5 grandchildren that I raised, so it's just really been, but anyway, that's all. I didn't say much more.
Yeah, I know. Thanks so much, Pura, Fabiola, Precious. I know we're running late, running a little late, running low on time. I think we have a couple seconds if anyone wants to drop a quick question into the chat for anyone, but otherwise, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. Just wait like 10 seconds in case anyone. Okay. Beautiful. I just want to say thank you so much to Precious, Fabiola, Pura. Y'all's music is incredible, and being able to connect your music to the stories you're telling is such an honor to witness and learn from y'all. And I'm so grateful. The work we do at Whippoorwill Arts is centered on listening directly to the needs of working musicians and trying to create programming that responds adequately. Precious is actually an active collaborator on our advisory committee with us on a new set of guidelines for professional protections and ethical pay for musicians, especially touching on the experiences of musicians with disabilities and artists of culture. And we just want to make sure that musicians can participate in the music ecosystem in a way that contributes to their well-being. So if you're interested in that, if you resonate with the energy and the vision, or if you just want to, nurture the kind of creative energy that exists within incredible artists like these three, please check us out at whippoorwillarts.org. Also, a huge thank you, shout out to GIA for letting us put on this session, this workshop, and I hope y'all have been able to, enjoy the music, enjoy the stories, and learn a little bit about what Puerto Rican artists are about and what they're looking for in a music ecosystem. Thanks. I'll pass it on to.
Hi. Thank you, Tiara, for that. That was fantastic. And for those of you who are here and listening, please reach out to the artists. They were so fantastic. You guys gave such a great presentation. So we just had our first summer series as part of our 2023 Grantmakers in the Arts Conference. And we have our next one on August 23rd. So I hope to see you all there. Thanks for joining us today, everyone.